what I want to talk about today is so critical, so important that you could be physically healthy, you could be wealthy, and you could be on your way to a great retirement. But if this is not strong, what we're going to talk about today, your life is not complete. Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer, where armor is forged through mental, spiritual, and physical preparation. Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer. I am your host, Carl Wimmer, and I am honored that you are joining me today on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you download your podcasts. It is a pleasure and an honor to be with you each and every week as we bring you some of the best information about health and fitness, especially targeting those of us in the first responder community. We have so much going on right now, so many different things going on, so many events happening, and I'm just so excited to continue to share with you what we are working on. Just want to encourage you to continue to go to our YouTube page where you can look at all the past videos. You can get caught up to speed on our Habits to Healthy in 1 Year program. You can click on our link tree in any of the bios, whether it be on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever it might be, and download the PDFs to our Habits to Healthy in 1 Year. You can also click on some of the products that we recommend here at First Responder Fitness that will help you get healthy and well in the coming year. You know, the last several episodes have been targeted towards physical fitness, because that is something that I'm so passionate about. It's something that we're going to continue to bring you the best information we possibly can when it comes to building muscle, losing fat, changing your metabolic health, just making sure that you have a long, healthy, prosperous life, that as a first responder, as a police officer, as a firefighter, or just as a citizen, that you have the best opportunity to live a healthful, happy, prosperous life well after you retire, so that when you're older, when you're in those quote unquote golden years, they truly are golden. You can travel the world. You can spend time with your family. You can play with the grandkids. You can do the things you want to do. Because, you know, let's face it, most of our lives, we do the things we have to do. There's a great scene in one of my favorite movies, the movie Gladiator, where Maximus is talking to his assistant, the person who's assigned to him. And they're talking about duty and responsibilities. And the gentleman says to him, he says, "Sometimes I do what I want to do. Most of the time I do what I have to do." Well, you know what? That is how we live most of our life. We do what we have to do. And after you retire, I'm retired SWAT team commander, retired detective. And when you retire, you have earned the right to do what you want to do. You should be able to spend time traveling and doing the things you want to do. But you can't do that unless you're happy, healthy, both physically and mentally. And that's what we are here for. With that being said, we're going to shift gears just slightly this week because it is Valentine's Day week. Valentine's Day is coming up this week, February 14th. And I know that many of you don't celebrate Valentine's Day. I know many of you think it's just a commercialized holiday. I know that, you may or may not like it. It may be one of those things that maybe it causes you a lot of stress and a lot of pain because maybe you've had breakups in your past and maybe you've had a divorce or something. Maybe you're going through that right now. But what I want to talk about today is so critical, so important, that you could be physically healthy, you could be wealthy, and you could be on your way to a great retirement. But if this is not strong, what we're going to talk about today, your life is not complete. And what I'm talking about is marriage. Marriage within the first responder community. This is so critical that we talk about it, and I think it's appropriate that we talk about it on Valentine's Day week, the week of Valentine's. I think that for me, I haven't always celebrated Valentine's Day. Matter of fact, early in my marriage, I probably forgot about it more than I ever remembered it. But it's grown to mean something to me as my marriage and as my relationship with my wife has blossomed and developed and grown into just a fantastic relationship. And it's something that I would like, if I'm passionate about physical fitness, I am just as passionate, if not more so, about relationships between spouses, between couples, and how important that is to your mental health and your longevity. I understand it. I understand that law enforcement and firefighting is a very, very difficult career to balance the demands of your duty as a firefighter, as a police officer, with your family life. The long shifts, the missed holidays, the exhaustion after a tough shift, coming home to a spouse who really doesn't fully understand what you've just experienced or been through. It is just some of the things why first responders face unique challenges when it comes to their marriages and their relationships. Well, I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about that because at First Responder Fitness, we want to arm you both mentally, physically, and spiritually. And we can arm you physically as much as we possibly can. We can give you all the best advice, but the bottom line is if you're not okay in your personal relationships, then really nothing else matters. And if you've been through a nasty, ugly divorce, you know what I'm talking about. I have not, but I've witnessed so many of them in my career. I've seen where people who are going through these divorces, the only thing that matters to them is that situation. It eats at them. They age overnight. The stress and the heartache is real. And so I want to talk about this today. I want to peel back the shame. I want to peel back the things that we don't talk about, and I want to discuss relationships and marriage within the first responder community. You know, we do face unique challenges, and statistically speaking, according to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, a 2017 study showed that first responders face increased marital strain due to work-related stress. No question about it. Some of the unique problems that we have within the first responder community, of course, is the shift work, the unpredictable schedules. The non-traditional hours means, well, you know what it means. It means missing birthdays. Means missing anniversaries, missing school plays or sports and sporting events, missing family dinners. I can't even begin to count the amount of Thanksgivings that I missed early in my career before I had enough seniority to get the holiday off. Christmases and just important days are difficult to work around in law enforcement. And even when you're home, adjusting from, say, a night shift or, if you're on night shift and you are sleeping during the day and you're trying to figure out and balance your family life with your work life and your sleep that is so critically important, it is a hard thing to balance. I get it. I did it for many, many years. I worked in law enforcement for almost 25 years. I understand that struggle. Or maybe the post-shift exhaustion, that creates a lot of distance between spouses where you're just tired when you come home. You don't want to talk. You've dealt with people all day long and you don't want to deal with people anymore. So you struggle. And if you haven't watched our interviews that we've conducted with mental health experts in the first responder community, uh, with Dr. Gil Martin and with mental health counselor Josh Watcott, I encourage you, go back and watch these episodes because they hit on exactly what the issues are. People checking out and distancing themselves and putting up a shell when they get home rather than opening up. It causes a struggle within marriages. One particular study showed that shift work creates a work-family conflict. No kidding. We didn't need a study for that. But it increases stress levels for both partners. It creates not only stress levels for the first responder, but for their spouse. And if we don't learn to work through these problems, it will eventually break us. Additionally, first responders deal with tragedy quite regularly. We deal with things that are not normal. Let's just admit it. We deal with things that are not normal. We deal with child abuse. We deal with death. We deal with destruction. We deal with heartache. We deal with sorrow. We deal with the darkest things that communities and that the world has to offer. And this can often lead to emotional detachment at home. It can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm a big believer that most law enforcement officers, if they've worked more than 5 or 10 years, they have some type of PTSD. It can lead to hypervigilance, where you are just always on edge. Even at home, you cannot relax. You know what it's like. I mean, even to this day, even though I've now been retired for 4 years, when my wife and I go to a restaurant or any place in public, she knows to take the seat that allows me to see the door. She just knows that. She knows which seat to take. She doesn't even question it. And it is something that is and I am not comfortable with my back to the door. It leaves me completely on edge and uneasy. And I wouldn't even consider that necessarily hypervigilant. That is just a habit that I've gotten into, that many of you have gotten into. But it's not normal. That is not normal behavior. Most citizens never even think about that, but we do. And so sometimes when you're in the mix of this hypervigilance, PTSD, you have this need to shut down when you get home. You shut down emotionally. Traumatic incidents especially can make spouses feel left out or feel left feeling unimportant because you shut them out, you clam up. Psychology Today said divorce rates are higher, much higher, among emergency responders when PTSD is untreated, or when there is untreated trauma from a first responder incident. Yet we think we got it all together. We're tough. We can handle it. We can manage it. And sometimes we really can't, and you need help. This constant need to feel like the protector comes, you bring that home with you. And so sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable at home with your spouse because you need to feel like the protector. You feel like there's this expectation that you can just handle everything that is thrown at you. And these are all of the struggles that happen within a first responder marriage. The long hours, the high stress can just wreak havoc on family life. And this only gets worse if both spouses work within the first responder community. If both of you work as first responders or in the emergency services, I can't imagine how much worse the stress is, and even perhaps the competition between spouses. Those things are difficult. So obviously, I don't need to tell you as a viewer of this show that marriage can be difficult in a first responder family. It just can. But what can we do about it? So, with the negative portion behind us, with that massive introduction about how difficult marriage can be within a first responder family, I would like to discuss with you, and this, let me tell you, this is advice not just for first responders, but this is advice for everyone. If you are married, if you have a relationship, this advice is for every person out there. These are tried and true tactics to help your marriage thrive. And so I don't want you to view this as, oh, this is only for first responders. No. If you are a first responder, yes, this is for you. If you are not a first responder, this is for you. This is for every married person who will watch this video. So let's talk about strategies to strengthen your marriage. The first strategy I want to talk about, which I think is by far the most important strategy to strengthen your marriage, is be intentional. Be intentional. You know, when we are dating and all the romance hormones are going and all the excitement of meeting somebody new and just being so Twitter-pated, so in love, so exciting in this new relationship, you're intentional. You're an intentional person. You think of taking your spouse a treat to their work and dropping it off. You think about that loving phone call or a little text message. You think about the little actions you can take while you're courting your spouse. And 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years into your marriage, those things seem to have gone away. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't. Because if you lose the intentionality, you will lose the romance. You need to be intentional in your relationship every single day. You need to plan things out. Check in. This can be simple. You can check in regularly through quick texts or video calls. Call your wife or your husband at home. If you're the first responder, call them. If you're at work, call them when you have a second and just check in. Send them a quick text saying, hey, how are things? How's the kids? What's going on? I love you. Be intentional and send those intentional text messages and check-ins with your spouse. An important thing is when you get home is to set a no work talk policy or only personal talk time at home. Now, of course, you want to be able to vent and talk a little bit about what took place at work, and that's important and healthy. When you get home, your spouse says, hey, how was work? What took place? What happened? And most of the time, oh, it was fine, nothing. And we're going to talk about communication here in just a minute. But you should talk about it. Just give them an update, give them a brief, let them know what's going on. They want to be a part of your life. And when your spouse asks you how the home life is or how your life is, open up a little bit, share a few things, intentionally share some things. Don't clam up. I want you to think of actually a couple things that you can say that took place that day that you can share with your spouse when they get home or when you get reconnected. But after that, you really should have a no work talk policy, because work as a police officer, and I imagine as a firefighter, although I've never been a firefighter, both of my boys are going to be firefighters, I imagine that it is very difficult to not talk about work because it is such a large part of who you are and what you do in your life. And it's important that you have a life outside of your career. One of the things that we can do to be intentional is to make the time you are together count. Make the time when you are together, make it quality time. Quality time is more important than quantity time. Even small, meaningful moments help maintain connection between spouses. So making sure that you spend quality time with each other rather than quantity time. Quantity is good too, but quality over quantity. I'm a huge fan of scheduling date nights, even unconventional ones. I remember many years ago when I worked graveyard shift. And I had weird days off. They were like in the middle of the day, maybe Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We would have somebody come to our house to watch our kids or whatever the case might be in the afternoon. And my wife and I would leave the house in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon to go to the mall, to go shopping, to go to lunch, spend some time together. It was actually, I look back on those times quite fondly because I remember that, Tuesday afternoon, it was easy to go to a matinee movie or to a restaurant because nobody else is there. And so we would spend time together, and we would be very, very careful to schedule time together. Perhaps it needs to be a breakfast. You need to spend breakfast together after a night shift before you go home and go to bed. Say, hey, babe, meet me here and we'll have breakfast. How fun would that be? And she wakes up, she comes and she meets you at the restaurant. You have breakfast, or he, whichever way it works, whoever's on graveyards, and you have a breakfast together. And then you can go home, go to bed, get your sleep. But you need to be intentional. One of the things that happens in marriages, a lot of marriages, especially first responder marriages, after you have been married for a period of time, is the sexual intimacy starts to diminish and can actually disappear. I can't tell you how many friends I've talked to in the law enforcement community who live largely sexless lives. They have no sexual relationship with their spouse whatsoever, in large part because they are rarely in bed together. She's sleeping at night, he's sleeping during the day. And so not only that, but then when you start adding kids to the mix and you have young kids at home, and it just, and then you try to be spontaneous to where both of you are feeling frisky at the same time. I mean, how dumb do we have to be to think that you're both going to feel romantic and frisky at the exact same time when you both are living different lives and they're stress-filled lives? I am a huge advocate, and let me tell you, if there's one piece of advice I can give you today that is probably the best piece of advice that you will get today, it is this: you need to schedule sexual intimacy. And yes, I mean, pull out your calendar, pull out your day planner, and put it on the calendar. Now, immediately when I say that, most women, as I talk to them, most people, because my private life, I do counseling with couples. I don't want to get too much into that, but as part of my private life, I counsel with married couples regularly. And I recommend that people schedule sexual intimacy. And almost always the spouse, the woman, the wife, balks at that. They say that just seems too clinical. It just seems not spontaneous, not romantic. And they're absolutely wrong. I'm telling you right now, if that's the way you view it, you're just wrong. And you need to give it a try. You need to pick, as a couple, you need to sit down and talk about this issue. The fact that, hey, babe, we haven't had sex in 3 months. We haven't had sex in 2 months. We haven't had sex in 6 months. Whatever it might be, we need to figure out how we can connect intimately and say, okay, let's set it to where, I'm just going to throw this out there, Friday evenings. Friday evening is going to be your date night, if you have Fridays off, of course. But it could be whatever. It could be the middle of the day. It could be morning time. It could be whatever. But Friday evening, I'm off duty. I don't work. You're home. I'm home. Let's be intentional. Let's clean the house. Let's do the dishes. Let's go out to dinner. Let's stay in and make dinner. Let's set up some candles in the bedroom. Let's turn on some music, and let's let Friday evening be our evening, and we will protect it as much as we possibly can. If we need to go out somewhere, that's great. If we need to stay in, that's great. But this is our time to reconnect, to spend time together, and to connect sexually and intimately. I'm telling you right now, if you start doing that, what you will see, particularly the ladies, what you will see is you'll see your spouse. If you start doing this and it's a regular thing to where he can expect it and you can expect it, what you will start to see is you'll start seeing him. Let's say your special day is on Friday. You'll see the day before Friday, maybe on Thursday, throughout the week, you'll see some more dishes being done. You might see the bedroom being vacuumed and the bathroom being cleaned, his socks and his shoes being picked up, and him just kind of sprucing things up in anticipation of the exciting time you're going to spend together on Friday evening. You will see a change in your partner as they know. And so you talk about, well, it's not spontaneous, not romantic. No. Because in the days leading up to that, you can send little sexy text messages to each other. You can send you can send notes to each other. You can put a little note in his whatever lunchbox if he takes one to work. You will start figuring out ways to make it fun, romantic, and it becomes something that you both look forward to. Trust me on this. Schedule sex. Be intentional, and schedule your date nights. These things are so important. Number two, when it comes, so first one was be intentional. The second strategy I want to give you is communication. Nothing is more damaging to a marriage than shutting down and not communicating with each other. Understand this. Your spouse is your friend and your ally. Your spouse is your greatest partner. They are there in the thick of it with you, and they're there when things are good. They are there in the fight with you, and they're there when things are friendly. Your spouse is not your enemy. Your spouse is not your enemy. They are your advocate. They should be your advocate. You should be their advocate. You should be each other's support. But you can't be each other's support unless you communicate with each other. If there is something wrong, you need to communicate. You need to learn. When we are children, we are afraid to talk. When we're children, we don't talk. We get embarrassed to talk. We are shy, whatever that might be. You need to get over that. Pull up your big boy pants, your big girl dress, and learn to communicate. You need to learn to communicate about sex, all aspects of sex, telling your partner the things you like, the things you don't like, telling your partner your fantasies, the things that turn you on, the things that turn you off, telling your partner about financial stresses, financial goals. You need to be able to communicate about everything in your marriage, and you need to start practicing it. It doesn't come natural. You need to practice communication. Now, here's some important keys to that. You need to be a safe space. I hate that term. Such a triggering term these days, but you need to be a safe space for your spouse. What that means is this. If they're going to share with you their life dreams, their life goals, if they're going to share with you critique about you, if they're going to share with you their sexual fantasies, if they're going to share with you their financial struggles or their needs, you have got to be a place where they will not feel embarrassed. They will never feel embarrassed. They will never feel shame, and they will never be mocked for what they tell you. You see, spouses want to communicate. They want to talk, but they're afraid they're going to be embarrassed. They're afraid they're going to feel shame. They're afraid they're going to be shut down when they start to open up and communicate. If you are the type of spouse that shuts your spouse down when they communicate things that you don't like to hear or that maybe are a little sensitive, you are not being intentional when it comes to communication. You need to be able to listen without offense. You need to be able to listen without trying to clap back. And you need to listen to what they are saying. Your spouse is not your enemy. Communication is key. The number three strategy is you need to learn to handle emotional stress together. Handle emotional stress together. Understand when you've talked too much, okay? It's time to give space. Let each other decompress. Let each other work through things. If you come home from a very hard day at work, it's not easy when your spouse is pushing you and picking at you and saying, what's going on? What's wrong? What's wrong? Sometimes the spouse, you have to be patient. And you have to give them space. Let them emotionally decompress. You've got to learn to work together through those things. Understand, your spouse is not your therapist. Okay? Your spouse is not your therapist. So, yes, you need to share with them and they need to share with you, but sometimes you need outside help. I am a huge advocate when I counsel with married couples in my private life. Outside of physical fitness, I'm a huge advocate of marriage counseling. I'm a huge advocate of premarital counseling, and I'm a huge advocate of current marriage counseling. There is no shame in any of that. The only thing there is shame in is getting divorced without fighting for your marriage. I talk to people all the time who say, I did everything I could to save my marriage. And there's no shame here. No shame. No guilt. I just want to share this with you. I talk to people who say, I did everything I could to save my marriage. I'm like, really? I'm sorry to hear that. Did you go to counseling? No, nothing a counselor could do. Well, with all due respect, you didn't do everything you could to save your marriage. If you didn't go to counseling, you didn't do everything you could have done to save your marriage. Counseling works. Now, sometimes you have to find the right counselor. Sometimes you have to find the right one that works with both men and women. You have to find the right one that can speak your language. But counseling works. Marriage counseling and emotional survival for law enforcement and firefighters, that kind of counseling absolutely works. You need to recognize when professional counseling, chaplains, or peer support groups are needed. And if you don't recognize it, you need to have the respect to listen to your spouse when they say you need it. Don't take offense. Remember the whole communication thing. Let them communicate. Be a safe place for them to communicate their fears, their concerns. Finally, I would encourage you, as a strategy to strengthen your marriage, is to find a common spiritual grounding. That could be a religious faith. It could be whatever works for you. I have very strong feelings about this particular topic, but I'm not going to bulldoze you because that's not what First Responder Fitness is about. I am a big believer, however, that a couple that has a united faith has a strong marriage. When the job gets hard, your united faith can be an anchor. When life gets hard, your united faith can be an anchor. You can spend time praying together, meditating together, spending some time uplifting, reading something uplifting and sharing it with each other. As the interview with Dr. Gil Martin several episodes ago talked about, many police officers within the first 5 years of becoming a police officer, if they did attend church before they were a police officer, they stop attending church into their career. About 5 years into their career, they stop attending church. Attending church together even when your schedules don't really align, can strengthen your bond as a married couple. So I think you really need to consider that. I think you need to consider your spiritual unity together as a couple, because it can help bond you together. If you've been in this career at all as a first responder, you have no doubt seen many divorces. You've experienced it yourself, perhaps. You've seen it with your partners and the people you work with. And it's always ugly and it's always heartbreaking. You know, when you think about a longtime couple, you think of them together. You think of, oh, there's Jimmy and Sue. You don't think of Jimmy and Sue over here. You think of, that's Jimmy and Sue. And when they get divorced, it affects every person. It affects their family, their kids. It affects the people at work, because it's no longer Jimmy and Sue. Now it's, you don't know what it is. Marriage is worth fighting for. Marriage is worth fighting for. If you thought that this person was worth marrying, they are worth fighting for. And so I encourage you, as a person, whether you're a first responder or not, warrior up, and defend the things that are most important to you. You know, you say you would die for your spouse. You say you would die for your kids. Will you fight for them? Will you fight for them as quickly as you would die for them? Fight for your spouse. I've had struggles in my marriage, especially early on. My wife and I have this little joke. We tell people we've been married. I think we're going on 27 years now. We tell people, yeah, we've been married 27 years. 15 of it happily. It's actually more than that, of course. But the first few years of our marriage were very difficult, very hard. But we pushed through. And one of the messages that my wife and I send to other younger couples who have been married a shorter period of time than us is that if you're willing to push through, if you're willing to put in the work, if you're willing to fight for each other instead of fight each other, marriage can be the most amazing thing in your life. Your spouse can be the most important person in your life. That is why I love Valentine's Day. I go all out for Valentine's Day now. I have a plan for this week. I'll probably post some of it on my Instagram page so you can see it, and on the Facebook page. I have a plan. I plan ahead for Valentine's Day because I love my wife so much because of what we've been through together. Marriage, it can be fantastic, even for a first responder. So I encourage you, if you need help, get help. If you need counseling, please get counseling. Go back and watch this. Share this with someone you love. Share this with your friends. Share this with everyone on your patrol shift, because you know what? We all need it. We all need it. I'm Carl Wimmer, wishing you a happy Valentine's Day and reminding you, be good to yourself, be good to others, and as always, stay safe.